Thank you, Chetan, for doing this. I think it's quite useful for all of us, and particularly sharing experiences helps because it's such a lonely task in a way. Uh, I'm Sanjay Dhar, and I'm a paintings conservator. I specialize in wall paintings conservation, and I've been doing so for the last almost 30 years now. And today I'm actually not sharing my full sort of work, as so to say, but only sort of sharing a part of the context because I'm sort of right at the end of it, and one, I didn't have time to organize all the material into a coherent thing. So basically what I did was I put up a few slides so that to give you an idea of what I'm up to and what it basically means. Essentially, what my thesis is about wall paintings in Ladakh. Ladakh, as you may know, uh, is in the northern part of the country. Why is moving? Okay. If you see this map, Ladakh is right at the northern tip of the country, and you may also be aware that Ladakh is in the news for reasons other than its geographical setting. So this is Ladakh right here, and it's a huge expanse and sparsely populated. The major religion in this area is Buddhism, and if you have ever been to Ladakh, you'll see that almost the entire landscape here is you can feel the religion permeates, even the landscape speaks it. So this is Ladakh, and just to get back, why am okay? So my uh, thesis topic is assessment and management of risk to Buddhist wall paintings in Ladakh, and I'll share the context immediately after this. Risk essentially is defined as effect of uncertainty on objectives, and this definition is more of a corporate definition because it talks about objectives in that context, and also talks about things in a corporate or an institutional or a structured environment, which is mostly where risk studies have developed. They've developed in medicine, in insurance, in all sorts of fields. Today, almost there's hardly any area where risk studies and risk coverage is not involved, including, as it ought to be, disasters and disaster management. But risk is also defined, here is another definition of risk, which is slightly much more longer and complex and not complex actually. It is an unwanted event which may or may not occur. Risk is the cause of an unwanted event which may or may not occur, where the probability of an unwanted event which may or may not occur, the statistical expectation value of an unwanted event which may or may not occur, the fact that the decision is made under conditions of known probabilities. Uh, this is another definition. Now, all these definitions, if you see, there is a stress on certain part of it. So, an unwanted event which may or may not occur may be of interest to, say, car insurance, where the unwanted event may be an accident. And the cause of an unwanted event may be of interest to, say, an industry, to a factory where, for example, failure of electricity may result in loss of revenue or so on and so forth. So each of the stresses, if you notice, are according to where the risk is being measured or where the risk is assessed. So it's quite a fluid sort of application. However, it always remains that there's a component of probability, there's a component of not knowing what is going to happen. Therefore, risk in many ways is a predictive science. Risk-based, anything that you do with risk is predictive. And to make it more certain, a lot of data has been generated in the industries so that so that in future or whenever they are assessing risk, they are able to make a sound guess. Now, if you look at it, there are basically three risk is divided. There are three types of risk, and I'm just sharing this with you for background information. One would be catastrophic, that is, it happens occasionally, it doesn't happen all the time. Uh, Something like an earthquake or a tsunami or something, any of these major events that happen. These happen rarely, but can be catastrophic in the extent of what happens. Then there are the severe incidents which are sporadic, and then there are the ones that keep happening slowly and slowly and slowly. For example, Earth is settling under a house over a period of time, and suddenly you find that the house is collapsed. So, despite the fact that it can have a major impact, but it can happen gradually. The other thing that one has to keep in mind is that risk can take place at many levels. For example, in the case of my wall paintings, I have to consider the environment, I have to consider the structure, and I have to consider the wall paintings which are inside the structure. So it's an extremely complex whole that one has to consider when one is looking at risk. And all the factors related to whether it is environment or structure or wall paintings, these are, some of them can be predicted, some of them are known, but it can always have unknown factors. Besides this, my particular problem with this thesis was that in Ladakh, there are something like 4,500 cultural sites that have been listed. And out of these, almost 25% have wall paintings. And there is absolutely no structure to manage these wall paintings. There's absolutely no structure to know what is happening with these paintings, and anyone can do anything at any place. And a lot of these paintings are historically important. A lot of these paintings are artistically important. A lot of these paintings have other significance as well. So essentially, the problem that one is trying to address is how does one address this large number of paintings which have not been studied properly. We don't even know. We know some of the great works, for example, Alchi and Sumda and other places which are from the 11th, 12th century onwards. But there's a lot that is still undiscovered. There's a lot that has not been studied. Therefore, if they are being lost for whatever reason they're lost, we don't know that we have lost them. Two, there's nothing we are able to do about it, even if we know that there's within this environment that we have at present in Ladakh, with socio-economic developments and all that, everyone is wanting to gain merit, and you gain merit by making new temples or making new paintings and so on and so forth. So it's a pretty complex problem. I'm just going to go into some aspects of those problems today. Okay. Now, my study is based on 5 sites, and all the 5 sites have about 8 wall painting schemes. This is my site selection. In my site selection, what I did was I have chosen sites that sort of are representative of what would be uh, a majority of what would cover a majority of paintings in terms of geological conditions, in terms of environmental conditions, in terms of structural conditions, in terms of architecture, in terms of material technique, social and religious environments. So one has tried to do that, and the number of painting schemes being is primarily because there's absolutely zero data on wall paintings as such. Whatever we know, there are very recent studies that give us some idea of what of material technique. There's very little on how structures behave in, say, earthquakes, and Ladakh is a highly seismic zone. So there's a lot of there's a particularly a great amount of information that one needs to make this assessment, which is not available there. So one of my major challenges, and also one of my, which would be a major contribution, is the process by which one is assessing these risks. So this is Saspol, and this is one cave which is, sorry, oops. This is one cave. Can you see my cursor? Yeah. And this is another cave, and this is a third cave. There are three caves. Actually, this site has many more caves. If you look at this, is a distance shot, and you can see all these caves. Some of them have collapsed, and some of them were abandoned while digging them out. So it's a huge, beautiful site with beautiful paintings inside. So this is just a second. This is these are the paintings inside one of the caves, and this is one of the walls. It has got 6 walls, and this is one of the cave. This is one of the wall, the main wall, and this is the Shakyamuni, and on either side are various forms again of Shakyamuni, but these are different forms. This is a Gelugpa, which is the yellow hat sect to which the Dalai Lama belongs, uh, and that we know from for example this is a particularly popular formation of the yellow sect. And then on this side are various masters of the yellow sect, and these are the uh, arhats. These are 16, 1, 2, 8 and 8, 16. 16 arhats. Arhats are the earlier lineage of the Tibetan masters. A lot of them actually came from India or have been adopted from India. So you can see this close-up of these two images. They're very beautifully done, and from an early period. This is around 14th, 15th century. Uh, this is another cave. It's an open cave, and this is a slightly earlier period than the one that I had shown you just now. And we know that because in the earlier period there were more of these geometric mandalas and stuff like this that was used in on the that was painted on the walls. A much more complex religious iconography, whereas as they came to the later part, the iconography becomes simpler and there's more static and repetition in it. And this is the third cave, and in this, for example, this is an Avalokiteshvara. It's a beautiful 1,000-arm Avalokiteshvara with 11 heads, and you can see that a lot of damage has already taken place, but what survives is of great importance because it tells us about the iconography, it tells about us about the stylistics, and a whole lot of things for the entire Tibetan art scene of this period. This is another of my sites. It's called Basco. It was the ancient capital of Ladakh during the 16th century. And as you can see, this site is extremely complex and it's a very, very beautiful site. I spent a huge amount of time. I've lived here almost 3 to 4 months every year for 3, 4 years. So these are the palace remains. This is a palace. This is a temple here. If you can see the cursor, there's another temple here, and there's one more temple on another side. And this is my site again, which I had restored in between 2000 and 2006. We restored these paintings. It's a huge site, and the walls are huge. The paintings are very, very beautiful. They were in a pretty bad state. But more importantly, this entire hill, when we came here, was about to crumble. It's the rock is completely fragmented, and because of that, the foundations of all the temples were in great danger and at risk of falling. So that was the reason that why we had arrived there in the first place. Oops. Okay. This is another 16th, 17th century site, again a fort site called Igu. There's just a small little wall that is remaining, and this is the back of the temple. The temple is somewhere here. And these are the paintings inside, and you can see that the stylistic of the paintings is slowly developing towards more and more of a Tibetan typology. And these are again very beautiful. It's an abandoned temple, not an abandoned temple, a deconsecrated temple. It was up on the hill, and towards the early part of the last decade or so, uh, I think towards the end of 1990s or so, the villagers decided that it was too much to take water all this way up and live all the way up. So they descended down into the valley, and they shifted the temple. So all the gods were taken out and and given a new home in the new temple on the valley below. But these paintings are important, and these paintings are quite significant. This is another site. It's a monastic complex, very old, and at a place called Gya. And Gya is the beginning of the Ladakh Valley. And as you can see, the rock here is in a very bad state. This is the temple. It's a complex. It's a monastic complex actually, and has two halls. This is the inner hall, painting inside the inner hall, which is called the Gongkhang. And the Gongkhang is something as tourists or travelers or visitors will never get to see because that's where the main tantric practices of the sect happen. So all monasteries have this Gongkhang, and this is somebody called a Dakini, and you're not allowed to look at these gods because it's considered that if you look at them, bad things will happen to you. So only someone who has got a lot of merit and who is a high lama and knows how to deal with them or talk to them can deal with them. Now this complex has been abandoned, and they have been building temples just close by. And this is the next major site. It's a well-known site called Hemis, and it's a huge monastery. It is a 17th century monastery built during the time of Sanjay, and Sanjay is sort of the golden age of Ladakh. He was born in Basco, And during his time, Ladakh almost had a major part of what is now called Gugi, or the western part of uh, Tibet, Chinese Tibet or Tibetan China. He had Baltistan, parts of Himachal Pradesh, a major part of Himachal Pradesh, then of course this whole area and Zanskar area. So it was a huge kingdom and pretty rich at that. The riches of Ladakh have always been because of its position on the trade road. It was the connecting road from the Silk Road to the Indian plains and Kashmir. So both sides have had an influence. The Silk Road has had an influence, and at the same time, Kashmir and the Indian plains have played an important role. Now, the basic problem that is happening at this point is that Ladakh has become extremely, because of tourism, because of the army, because of the money being spent in this area, and generally because they've found new ways of generating income. It's by and large sort of prosperous area, and because of that prosperity, a lot of money goes to the religious institutions also. And since the religious institutions somehow think that making new things is better, so what is essentially happening is they break or uh, completely bring down something and then make it fresh. Now, here you see this old temple. This is a temple near the Leh Palace, and you can see this unique. It's a very, very unique structure. You almost don't see it in the entire Ladakh. Now, this building was brought down. This is the entire monastery, sort of a temple monastery, because the monks used to live here also. So this is the entire structure. Now this entire structure here, it was brought down in 2015, and not 2015, sorry, in 2019, and they're building it all over again. So everything inside it, this beautiful structure, the paintings inside are gone completely. Now, in a place like Saspol, for example, this particular cave has never been used from the time it was made, and the paintings that you're seeing are, almost. I saw them first in 2002 or something like that, and they were pristine. They were almost as if they'd been painted yesterday. But now that people have started visiting them, what happens is drivers come with visitors, and when they come in, they light lamps, which is totally unnecessary. It's not required to be lit inside. It's not required to be lit because the gods are not alive. They're not consecrated. And this entire thing of oil and lamps and soot and all has started affecting the wall paintings here. And this has happened in the last 10 years, and it is increasing. Along with that, the people, the locals are wanting to project these caves as the Ajanta of Ladakh without, and so that the visitor numbers go up for the site without making alternate arrangements for how to deal with the number of visitors. And it's all showing on the paintings. Now, this is Hemis, and these were the paintings, damaged paintings, in one of the parts of this huge hall that you're seeing now. And this entire hall was, these paintings were completely scraped off, redone, and repainted, and this is what you get after it. Obviously, this looks so fantastic that everyone, the locals like it, visitors like it, but the fact remains that historical material, historical evidence has been wiped out. These are some of the major problems that you encounter in Ladakh. Uh, Structural damage, because it is in an earthquake zone, and earthquakes are quite frequent. However, the building technology seems to withstand them, but you do get these cracking because the paintings are on a mud plaster and painted with a water-based, water-soluble medium. This is Igu, and you can see this has partly been treated, but the damage is because of water seepage. Because the roofs are flat and if they're not maintained properly, you can have water coming in. There's a lot of talk of climate change and uh, water problems because of that. But my study, according to my study, what I feel is that though there is climate change and water is coming in, but water has always come into the chambers because of poor roof maintenance, or sometimes just something just fails. So I have not essentially noticed anything which is directly related to climate change as of now. Uh, then there are these problems where the area with the painting, nothing is being done about this, and if you notice there's this huge crack coming along and it's just waiting for the right quantum of force which will sort of get this entire thing started, and it's just a matter of time when it happens. Likewise, physical forces, you can actually see through this, and it's a huge uh, double break wall on both sides. So, these are the problem. These are the essential problems that one has to deal with uh, when we talk about the risks. And what we are seeing is what has happened. And risk is not about what has happened or what you can see today, but it is about predicting what has not happened and what will happen. So I was required to essentially create an entire framework for assessing risk, and that was quite complicated despite the fact that uh, the process in itself is supposed to be simple. But if one doesn't have the data or if one doesn't have the right amount of information to compare it with, it becomes quite difficult. So basically what I did was I used the existing conditions and went back to the events that have caused it. And by identifying the events, I was able to sort of look into the future and see and assess if similar events happen, what will happen to something like this, something like what you're seeing on screen. Now, given that this is the condition, if we have an earthquake of a certain magnitude, what happens? And the main point of all this exercise is how do we manage it? One of my major findings in this is that most of the risks that one has identified are people related. That what I would term as sort of avoidable decisions. For example, the removal of the temple or the removal of the wall painting. These are completely avoidable things. You don't have to do them, but the risk is there. So avoidable risks because of people's wrong decisions or decisions uh, form the largest chunk of threats and hazards to these paintings, and at the same time manageable threats. For example, if you maintain the roof properly, if the cleaning is done properly, and so on and so forth, a lot of damage. Or if you don't allow, for example, lighting of the lamp in that cave, it's unnecessary, it's not required. If you just stop that, a lot of things will stop. So one of my major findings is that that is the greatest challenge, that the class of risk that is most effective in terms of the damage it does is because of people and because of people related activities. And I'm not considering, uh, there's this argument that, of course, these paintings are meant for worship, and therefore their purpose must be maintained. Of course, their purpose must be maintained, but if a painting has survived from 12th century onwards to today, obviously they were doing something right. They understood certain things. They didn't do things haphazardly. They weren't messing around with the paintings. So something is going wrong within the last 80, say 100 years. It has also to do with it's essentially about the main problems are that because of the people I was talking about, the Dogra invasion, and after the Dogra invasion, Ladakh had sort of been in a uh, economic decline, because of which the monasteries started to get were not repaired, and they just didn't have enough money to do things. And the final straw was when China closed the border almost till 1951 or something like that, 52, 53. Ladakhis could cross over to China and go to Tibet. So in 51, I think the Chinese finally closed the border on the Ladakh side. And that put Ladakh into a complete spin, which continued even, if you remember, the government of India till 1975, no outsiders were allowed. You had to have a permit to go in, and so on and so forth. So almost till 1975, everything was closed, and it's only in the 90s that things started getting better with more tourists coming in, and from 2000 onwards, it's been a steady up. So socially, that's when between the years, say for 100 years before independence and about 60, 70 years post independence, Ladakh was this completely closed place where very little social economic activity was taking place. So all the monasteries and paintings have suffered during that time most. But the fact remains that they've survived these uh, hundreds of years is also because of the people and because of the way they treated them. So obviously something has changed, which is putting these at risk. One of the factors remains social economic prosperity, and but it also is bringing in a lot of things that were not there or should not be there. So the management of these therefore has to be something which is similar to what if you look at public health systems, where awareness is the main factor that is utilized for managing risk of malaria or dengue or now the pandemic. So that's where I'm headed to. That's the solution that I'm offering. So that's it.